In the heart of 18th century France, a shadow fell that was not cast by the sun, but by a nightmare given flesh. It is a story that has been whispered for centuries, a chilling echo from a time when the line between man and monster was terrifyingly thin. Here, on Echoes of Time, we journey back to the remote and rugged highlands of Gévaudan to confront a mystery that remains one of history's most frightening and unsolved enigmas. Between the summer of 1764 and the early summer of 1767, the people of Gévaudan lived in a state of absolute terror. This was not a fear of war, nor of famine, nor of the political upheavals stirring in Paris. It was a primal, gut-wrenching dread of something that stalked the misty forests, the rolling hills, and the quiet pastures of their homeland. An entity known to history simply as the Beast turned this isolated province into its personal hunting ground. The first victim was a young girl, tending her flock. She was not the last. Over 3 terrifying years, more than 100 people would fall prey to the creature. The victims were overwhelmingly the most vulnerable. Women working in the fields and children watching over livestock, their lives cut short in attacks of unimaginable ferocity. The bodies discovered in the wake of the beast's rampages told a horrifying story. These were not the clean kills of a typical predator. Victims were savaged, their bodies brutally mutilated in ways that defied the known behavior of any native animal. The creature seemed to possess a malevolent intelligence, a cruelty that went beyond mere hunger. It left a trail of carnage that plunged the entire region into an abyss of fear and superstition. The whispers started almost immediately. This was no ordinary wolf. In the taverns and cottages, hushed voices spoke of the Loup Garou, the werewolf of French folklore, a demonic shapeshifter sent to punish the wicked. For the terrified peasants of Gévaudan, the legends their ancestors had told them around the fire had seemingly clawed their way into reality. Those who were lucky enough to survive an encounter provided descriptions that only deepened the mystery. They spoke of a creature of monstrous proportions, far larger than the largest wolf they had ever seen. Its fur was a strange reddish brown, its chest broad and powerful. It possessed a long, thin tail, and its mouth was filled with formidable, razor-sharp fangs. Some accounts even mentioned it could walk on its hind legs. It was unnaturally fast, impossibly resilient, and possessed an uncanny cunning. It seemed to shrug off bullets and evade the most elaborate traps with contemptuous ease. The attacks became more audacious, the creature growing bolder with each kill, cementing its reign of terror over the French countryside. News of the slaughter eventually reached the opulent halls of Versailles. The story of a monster ravaging a royal province was an embarrassment and a direct challenge to the authority of the French crown. King Louis XV, a monarch who presided over an age of enlightenment and reason, could not allow his subjects to be terrorized by what seemed like a creature from a dark fairy tale. He was determined to put an end to the menace. Initially, he dispatched dragoons, mounted infantrymen, to hunt down the beast. These soldiers, veterans of European wars, were confident they could handle a mere animal. They were wrong. The beast outwitted them at every turn, melting back into the rugged, unforgiving landscape of Gévaudan as if it were a phantom. The killings continued, mocking the king's efforts. Frustrated and facing mounting pressure, Louis XV escalated his response. He sent his own royal wolf hunter, Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Vaumel de Neval, a man famed throughout the kingdom for having killed over 1,000 wolves. When de Neval also failed, the king turned to François Antoine, his personal lieutenant of the hunt. This was no longer a simple pest control operation, it was a full-scale military campaign against a single entity. Substantial rewards were offered, attracting hunters, trackers, and opportunists from all over France. Thousands of men scoured the countryside, armed with muskets and driven by the promise of wealth and fame. Yet for months, the beast remained an elusive, deadly specter. Its ability to evade the most skilled hunters in the nation was nothing short of legendary, feeding the supernatural theories and deepening the terror that held Gévaudan in its grip. Centuries have passed since the last recorded attack, but the identity of the Beast of Gévaudan remains one of history's most compelling unsolved cases. Over time, three primary theories have emerged from the tangle of historical accounts, eyewitness testimony, and folklore. Each attempts to shine a light into the darkness that descended upon those French hills, yet each leaves us with as many questions as answers. The most straightforward explanation is that the beast was exactly what it appeared to be, at least at first glance, a wolf. Not just any wolf, but perhaps an exceptionally large and aggressive specimen, or even a wolf-dog hybrid. Such a crossbreed could account for the creature's unusual size, coloration, and lack of fear towards humans. In the 18th century, wolf populations in France were significant, and attacks, while not common, were not unheard of. Proponents of this theory suggest the beast may have been driven to its extreme aggression by rabies, a disease that can turn animals into fearless and relentless killing machines. This would explain the ferocity of the attacks and the creature's bizarre behavior. However, it doesn't fully account for the duration of the rampage, as rabid animals typically die within a short period. Nor does it explain the creature's almost supernatural ability to evade capture by thousands of seasoned hunters. This leads us to a second, more sinister possibility. What if the predator was not an animal at all? Some researchers have theorized that the Beast of Gévaudan was, in fact, a human predator, a serial killer, or perhaps a small group of them cloaking their horrific crimes under the guise of an animal attack. In a deeply superstitious society, rife with tales of werewolves, such a deception would be chillingly effective. This theory suggests that a depraved individual, perhaps wearing animal skins and armed with sharp implements, could have committed the murders. This would explain the sadistic mutilation of the victims and the calculated way the killer or killers seemed to leverage the existing folklore to create mass hysteria. It accounts for the intelligence, the evasion of traps, and the targeting of isolated, vulnerable victims. The idea of a human monster hiding behind a mythical one is a deeply unsettling thought, one that forces us to consider that the greatest monsters often walk on two legs. The third major hypothesis is perhaps the most fascinating, blending the line between the natural and the extraordinary. This theory posits that the beast was an exotic animal, entirely alien to the French ecosystem. The 18th century was an age of global exploration, and aristocrats often kept private menageries filled with strange and dangerous creatures from distant lands. It is conceivable that an animal like a striped hyena, or even a young lion, could have been imported to the region. A hyena, with its powerful jaws, sloping back, and unusual coloring, matches some of the eyewitness descriptions remarkably well. If such an animal escaped, or was intentionally released, it would have found itself in a world where it was a true apex predator, with local wildlife and humans completely unprepared for its presence. Some have even speculated that an animal may have been trained for malicious purposes, a living weapon unleashed upon the populace by a nobleman with a grudge. This theory explains the creature's unique appearance and the sheer brutality of its attacks, but it relies on a chain of events for which there is no direct evidence. And so, the mystery endures. The hunt for the beast did eventually lead to the killing of two very large wolves, and after the second was slain in 1767, the attacks finally stopped. But were either of these animals the true beast, or were they merely convenient scapegoats for a monarchy desperate to declare victory? The conflicting accounts, the inexplicable cunning of the creature, and the sheer scale of the terror it inspired have left a permanent mark on history. The story of Gévaudan has become a chilling testament to our primal fear of the unknown, a reminder that sometimes the darkest corners of the map hide monsters that are all too real. What truly stalked the forests of 18th century France, leaving a legacy of fear that echoes through time? A creature of nature? A monster of human design? Or something else that has slipped through the cracks of history, forever lost to the shadows? The woods of Gévaudan still keep their secrets.